Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to our very virtual board meeting. It is 12:05 and I'm calling this board meeting to order. I have Mr. Rick Garcia that's going to do our invocation and Miss Amber Bass is going to do the pledge. Um, let's go ahead and start that.
If you'll join me in prayer. Father God, we want to come before you right now. We thank you for allowing us this time to come and virtually meet. Father, we ask for your protection. Father, we ask for wisdom and insight and direction as this board leads this district into uncharted waters, Father. And we know that you have protection over everything that has a name, Father, and over COVID-19, Father. And as we lead this district, as our board, Father, leads and guides, we just ask that you be in the midst of all the decisions that are made, Father. And we thank you, Lord, for allowing the opportunity to come together to lead this district, to help this community and the things that are going on, Father. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amber.
The pledge, I guess, or sit, whatever you want to do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag. Oh, I'm.
I pledge allegiance to thee.
Oh, can you hear me? To thee, Texas, one and indivisible.
It's freezing.
Did it? I don't think I was cutting out.
All right.
Thank you, Amber. We do have a quorum present, so we will start our business items with Dr. Sanchez.
Okay, the first item we have is consideration and possible action on an order to postpone the district's general election from May 2nd, 2020 to November 3rd, 2020 pursuant to the proclamation issued by the governor of the state of Texas, March 18, 2020, and authorization, other matters incident and related thereto to mitigate public health risks during the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic. And so this item is basically putting the school district board election in line with action that's already been taken at the city level. The city already voted and they're postponing their election to November 3rd. So for safety and security purposes, it would make sense that the board consider moving the election to November 3rd for participation purposes. It really doesn't make sense with the governor having a executive order stating that we're not going to operate anything until after May 4th for public ed, May 4th for public ed, May 2nd comes before that. So it just seems that it would be logical. Of course, it's for board consideration, but that's the recommendation, just to be in line with city government and city elections.
Board, is there any questions at this time? If you'll give me a thumbs up and I can address to you.
I have one. Are there any repercussions from doing this or anything that we might have to deal with later?
The only thing we're still waiting on guidance from is the new term will be shorter to keep everything in line. So say that we delay till November 3rd, who's elected or re-elected at that time, their term will just be minus the time that they would have served otherwise. The benefit is we are allowed to submit board training hours up until November 3rd. So, you know, if you were lacking training hours and then with us not being able to do some of the training that we had scheduled, that's a plus. but the downside is the terms for the next 4 years won't be as long.
Any other questions, board? Amber?
Just was wondering, as far as our own board officers, can we just extend that then until November without having another officer election within our own board?
We can put that on the next agenda and on the April 16th agenda. And we can just extend it at that point in time. We can extend existing officers. So we'll still need a vote just to stay in compliance, just to extend the officers up until November 3rd. And then at that point in time, after the election, of course, that'll have to change again in October. But we can put it on the next agenda.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions, board? Okay,
To call for a roll call vote.
okay.
I got a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Adam.
I was asked the other day, what about, I know there was a deadline for people to sign up. Is that deadline as is? I mean, we're not gonna move it or anything.
That deadline stays. The guidance that we currently have is that deadline is what it is and that no new names can be submitted at this point in time. The only thing that changes is the election date. If new guidance comes out, I'll let y'all know, but that's the guidance we have so far.
Any other questions? Okay, do I hear a recommendation on the consideration for and possible action in order to postpone the district general elections from May 2nd to November 3rd?
I move that we postpone the district general's election from May 2nd, 2020 to November the 3rd, 2020, pursuant to the proclamation issued by the governor of the state of Texas, March 18th, 2020.
Okay, I hear a motion by Ms. Cheryl Dickerson. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, I have a second by Mr. Adam Soto. All in favor, Adam Soto, can I have your yes or no?
Yes.
Cheryl Dickerson, yes or no?
Yes.
Amber Bass, yes or no?
Yes.
Sophia Rivera, yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Tyler James, yes or no?
Yes.
Joanne Ray, yes or no?
Yes.
And Sylvia De La Garza, yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. The next item we have on the agenda is consideration and possible action to approve a Texas Education Agency appraisal waiver to waive appraisal requirements due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I was on a Zoom meeting with the superintendents from, I believe it was electoral district, House District 67, which is this area. And what the commissioner is allowing is us to apply for a waiver to the Texas Education Agency on teacher evaluation, which is T-test evaluation and appraisals. Most principals have finished them. However, there are some that still have yet to be completed. And what this waiver allows is if we're not coming back to school, there's no way to meet the timelines that were set, to hold all of the summative conversations. What this waiver doesn't do, however, if a principal and a teacher have agreed to a plan for improvement or there is need for a plan to improvement, that continues going into next year. But for teacher evaluation purposes, at this point, principals can give feedback to teachers. If there is a Like I said, a need for a plan for improvement that continues, but in terms of having to meet all of the timelines and deadlines when we're not in school or haven't been in school, and any teacher who's been put on a plan for improvement hasn't been given the opportunity to fully work through that plan because there haven't been students in classrooms. It's my recommendation that the board consider and approve the waiver to provide that flexibility. Again, I just don't see how we can meet the T-test evaluation timelines and submission criteria when we don't have students in classrooms with teachers. So be happy to answer any questions on the recommendation for the waiver.
Board, any questions? No questions? Okay. Can I hear a motion to consider the possible action to approve a Texas Education Agency appraisal waiver?
I move we approve a Texas Education Agency appraisal waiver to waive appraisal district requirements due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Cheryl Dickerson. Do I hear a second?
A second.
We have a second by Ms. Joanne Ray. All in favor, Adam Soto, yes or no?
Yes.
Cheryl Dickerson, yes or no?
Yes.
Amber Bass, yes or no?
Yes.
Sophia Rivera, yes or no?
Yes.
Tyler James, yes or no?
Yes.
Joanne Ray, yes or no?
Yes.
Celia De La Garza, yes. Motion carries 7-0.
All right. The next item is a lengthy item. And if y'all will follow me, I'll reference March 31st, 2020 memo that I sent you. And I'll begin with the preamble. I won't read the preamble word for word, but it's there on the screen. After a lot of consideration, I did ask Mr. Brown to visit with the principals, elementary, middle, high, and to get their perspective on whether or not it made sense after the governor made the decision to issue an executive order ceasing all school-based activities, and this includes UIL, University Interscholastic League, all of our fine arts and extracurricular. I asked Mr. Brown to ask them what their perspective was and to share that perspective. And so he visited with the principals, and their perspective unanimously was they felt that reconvening school in May would be difficult if we're allowed to, would be difficult, would be challenging, and would be very similar to starting the year all over again because students have been out of school for about a month and a week or so. And so we did want to get the perspective of our campus leaders. And of course, we did ask that they get the perspective of some of their teacher leaders. And I know that you each have had an opportunity to hear from teacher leaders as well. I then asked our central leadership directors who were over instruction what they were hearing because they had been busy the previous week working with teachers at the high school and across the district on planning our first round of virtual instruction to get their perspective. And their perspective was, again, very similar. They said that they didn't feel it made sense to try to start all over again in May and have about a week's worth of readjustment and then maybe a week or two of instruction, and then we're out again. So we did ask for their perspective on the instructional aspect of it. Now, the superintendent's leadership team that tends to deal with operations, we have to continue to function. So this doesn't change really anything for us. I mean, we still have to keep buildings up, keep them clean, keep grounds secure, hire people, pay people, run the district technology. I mean, all of those critical functions, communications, they continue. So that goes without saying. And the instructional directors, their work continues as well. So we have those people that will continue to work from home and so on and so forth. But with the recent memorandum that came out from the city as well, and that press release basically stated that we have verified cases, 4 of them in Plainview. Of course, you know, they don't lay out names and addresses and whatnot, so we don't know who they are. But with 4 cases identified and many more that are still pending results, we just didn't think that it was wise to put anyone in any level of risk. You end up with 1 staff member, you end up with 1 student who comes in with COVID-19, they sit in a classroom, and then you have multiple groups of students go through that classroom at the middle school and high school level. It just doesn't make sense in our mind to put anyone at risk. And so you have 1,400 students at PHS, and you have 1 student that walks into 1 classroom. In a matter of a week or 2, we could have 1,400 cases multiplied by them going to their homes, multiplied by where their parents or guardians work, multiplied by who they work with. And so when we look at it from that perspective, my recommendation, with the voice of our principals, with the voice of our instructional leaders, with the voice of staff members, is that even if the governor allows us to commence educational activities on campus after May 4th, and I don't believe he will, because he left the door open when he said that he's calling school off till May 4th, but leaving the door open to call it off longer if needed. I believe that if at the national level, the stay at home recommendation goes past April 30th to May 30th, that the governor will follow suit. So just to ensure that we can continue to plan, knowing what comes next, again, my recommendation to the board will be that we conclude the 1920 school year on campuses, and that we initiate the 2019 school year for the remainder of the time assigned online and virtually. Now, a consideration a little later on that I'll touch on is, if we are allowed to assemble in May, we can look at a graduation ceremony in May. So I'm hopeful that if we are allowed to assemble in May, that we can do a graduation ceremony. We'll set the date. We already have the date set. We have the time set. And so if the governor and the president say they feel that it's safe and wise for us to assemble, then we can look at graduation ceremonies on the regular day. If they say at that point in time it's not wise or safe to assemble, then we'll look at a virtual graduation ceremony where, Board President De La Garza recommended that we have the valedictorian and salutatorian address the student body from the boardroom individually. And then we call all the names and honors of all the students. Mr. Reagan can call all the names and honors of all the students thereafter. And so, we can work on a virtual graduation if we have to in worst case. So those 2 eventualities, again, they're both there. Any questions about any of that before I get into what we're looking at with grades and GPA and online instruction?
Board, any questions?
Okay. All right, going to section 1, students currently failing. You'll see that section 1 is broken up into an A for elementary, and then you'll see we have a B for middle and a C for high school and a D for all 3. Elementary and middle school similar, except for credit-bearing courses. So as you look through the particulars with elementary beginning there, This one I will read just in case there are parents and guardians out in public that are asking what our plan is. So I'll read through them quickly. Elementary one, every campus principal in concert with instructional faculty need to identify any student who is failing a core content subject, math, science, social studies, and literacy, which includes reading and writing. One, after identifying which students are failing, campus principals and teachers must decide what previously incomplete, undone, or unsatisfactory work can be reissued to provide students in said circumstances opportunity to meet the passing standard. Two, grades should be balanced with any work assignment. The intent is to replace missing, incomplete, and unsatisfactory student grades with a fair opportunity to meet passing standards. Three, please remember that the student is working at home and without the expertise provided by professional educators on the campus. This may require modifications to the initial assignment or a different assignment premised on the same content. Four, also, please set a reasonable deadline for return to work, such as certain assignments first, next, and subsequently. Do not recommend asking for it to all be turned in at once. Just the challenges in getting it all in at once and the challenges of grading it all. Five, the campus principal will need to work with instructional staff to determine how best to communicate with parents and provide assignments. Please be mindful of scheduled time to ensure we maintain small groups of people together at any given time. And so at the elementary level, there may be occasions where we can do some things online and email them in, but in the cases that we can't, we might have to exchange paper packets, and we would follow all safety protocol in getting the paper packets out and getting them back in. We don't anticipate that on any given campus we have a tremendous number of students failing at the elementary level. At the middle school level, because we have roughly 600 on each campus, and just the number of total students, number of total courses, we may have a few more there. And so as you can see under B, middle school, all information stated above appertaining to elementary applies to middle school. One, in place of literacy, please substitute reading and or writing depending on the grade level. Two, elective, co-curricular, and extracurricular instructors should provide enrichment opportunities via Google Docs or another easily access online platform. Three, for promotion purposes and because of time, core content is prioritized. Four, as stated above, please be mindful of schedule times for parents, guardians to pick up work in small, safe numbers of people. So with middle school, again, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we want to be sure we give students an opportunity to be able to pass, to meet the passing standard. In classes at the 8th grade level where the courses are credit bearing, that's going to sound a lot more like what I'm about to get into, which is C in high school. So 8th grade, we offer some career and tech ed, and we offer algebra and health and Spanish. So looking at high school, whatever I say in high school applies to those courses. So high school, priority must go to seniors because of prior communication between my office and Mr. Reagan's office. Teachers who serve seniors at PHS have been empowered to reach out to senior students failing courses aligned with graduation standards. The following criteria were stated for teachers of seniors and henceforth shall apply to all freshmen to junior students, including 8th grade students who are currently not at the passing standard for credit-bearing courses. We have very few issues at the middle school. Most of the students who are in 8th grade who are taking credit-bearing courses do really well. After identifying which students are failing, campus administration in concert with teachers must decide what previously incomplete, undone, or unsatisfactory work can be reissued to provide students in said circumstances opportunity to meet the passing standards. Two, high school work is challenging, and work assignments meant to replace missing, incomplete, or unsatisfactory student performance should take into consideration that the student is working from home with limited access to resources on campus, such as labs, certain instructional technology, and other resources. Three, parents are critical partners and should be informed of what their students are to complete. However, very few parents maintain the expertise of a high school content expert, so please be mindful of this when assigning makeup replacement work. Four, also, please set a reasonable deadline for return to work, such as certain assignments first, next, subsequently. Do not recommend asking for it all to be turned in at once. Five, please document efforts to obtain work set by deadlines. This conveys the serious nature of the completion and submission of these extraordinary opportunities to acquire credit. Six, the campus principal will need to work with instructional staff to determine how best to communicate with parents and provide assignments. Again, please be mindful of scheduled time to ensure we maintain small groups of people together at any given time. This is a course for our credit bearing courses, and this is everything. This is not just math, science, social studies, and language arts. This is fine arts courses, elective courses, foreign language courses, any course at the high school that bears credit. So if someone's failing a career and tech ed class, we're looking at opportunities to help those students. Now, when it comes to certification in career and tech ed, we're still at the mercy of the sanctioning body for those certifications. So course grade and certification are two separate things. We want to be sure that any student failing a CTE course gets an opportunity to pass it as with any other course. However, we're going to have to continue to work with those entities that provide opportunities for certification to meet those standards if there's still observation work that needs to be done out at a work site or job site that's not able to be done now. Also, many of those entities are delaying their testing just because they don't want large groups together. Item D, elementary, middle, and high school. Please abide by best practices in communicating with students and parents. This includes following but not limited to a succinct list. 1, ensure communication is bilingual and personnel are available to communicate with non-English speaking parents. 2, also be mindful of our exceptional education students who have individual education plans and students who have 504 plans. Those still apply. 3, we must continue to provide as much as possible contained in the IEPs, 504 plans, and LPAC documentation. This means opportunities for modified assignments, language considerations, and access avenues. And throughout the week, I've been listening in to all of the Zoom meetings and Teams meetings virtually, and every one of them have said, don't forget about our exceptional ed kids with IEPs. Don't forget about our 504 plans. Now, we can't meet every aspect of the IEP 504 or LPAC, but as much as we can, we are documenting. We have been in contact with our legal counsel who works over our students who are in special programs, and our legal counsel has stated that at this point, the federal government understands that it's difficult to meet all deadlines, timelines. For example, occupational therapy and physical therapy is hands-on therapy. And we can't have an occupational therapist or physical therapist going home to home to home. So we're doing everything we can in terms of trying to provide for the IEP, make recommendations to those parents, be in contact and communication with them outside of direct physical contact. And then 4, prior to communicating with parents and students, ensure communication with special program directors have been made to ensure support for language purposes, 504 compliance, or IEP accommodations is aligned among all support systems for said students. So just making sure that even though we can't go and see each other, we can still call each other, or we can still set up opportunities virtually to visit with each other. Any questions on any of the makeup work? So this is all about trying to get kids to pass. Any questions about any of that, elementary, middle, or high school?
Board, Board, any questions?
All right.
I've had a lot of parents asking about this, so I just want to clarify. If a child was currently passing before spring break, then their grades will not be graded. The instruction that's put out online is strictly for them to do at home, but will not be turned in. If your child was failing before spring break, then you will probably be hearing something from their school with makeup work or whatever they can do to get those grades up. Is that kind of the clarification on that?
Yes, ma'am, that is exactly correct. That is exactly correct. We froze all grades. If you're passing, you're passing. And if this is really for the students who are not. And so that's a lead into section 2, which is content reinforcement and maintenance opportunities.
Okay.
So you can see under the acknowledgement, the instructional directors and teachers have been working, again, virtually to provide everything that's online. And my 2 children have enjoyed the stuff that's online a lot better than grammar lessons from dad, because I was going old school like the old nuns with a ruler. Just kidding. But the my daughter and son have liked what the teachers have put online a lot better than what I had for them. And they both said I must have been a really mean teacher, but I told them I was really popular. So they neither of them believe that. So our path forward is, in order to stay in compliance with the Texas Education Agency, I'm under item B on section 2. Our instructional directors and teachers must continue to take what exists only as disparate pieces and build what doesn't exist. In essence, our team is creating a complete system of instruction for all learners in multiple languages with checkpoints and opportunities for feedback that is overtly understood by learners and interesting enough to engage them day in and day out. Except as described in sections 1C, 1 through 6, and 1D, 1 through 4, no individual teacher shall assign any lesson outside of the online instruction system approved by the instructional directors of my offices. We're charged with maintaining compliance with TEA standards for the COVID-19 instruction. So 1C and 1D are all about the makeup work, but no teacher should be assigning new work outside of what we're going to assign and put online together. I'm under section C now, or section 2C. Furthermore, the TEA requires accountability on the part of students via a grading structure. Understanding the complexity of this request, PISD will ensure access to online content via our website. And on occasion where parents do not have Wi-Fi access, we will preload iPads and other devices with content for student consumption in a format that does not require Wi-Fi. We've already distributed quite a few of those iPads, and if there are any parents out there who still are in need of those, there is a number on our social media as well as on our webpage that parents can contact, and we can get those devices to them in a safe manner. Under section 2C1, all Plainview ISD virtual instruction will provide students access to the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skill Standards for the grade level, content area, and/or credit-bearing course. In order to best ensure students adhere to TA requirements in this unprecedented and ever-evolving reality, PISD will require parents to complete a form available online and in print when necessary that attests students have access Plainview ISD's grade-appropriate virtual instruction. This form will require the following information via checkbox format. If you'll see A through K, student's name, grade designation, list of courses, access that align with student's grade designation, compliance with recommended hours for each content area posted online. For high school only, a list of all credit-bearing courses that student has accessed online, the parent name, signature and date, student signature and date, submission to each campus during the week of 5/18/2020 via email or a Dropbox. All documents submitted with signatures will result in a grade of pass with no impact on existing GPA. Each campus will make all reasonable attempts to obtain this documentation so as to provide students with credit for missed on-site instruction during the COVID-19. These documents will be maintained by each campus as evidence of compliance with TEA's COVID-19 grading/credit standards. So what that all means is, and I listened in on the conversations yesterday with high school teachers. Mr. Reagan and Mr. Fitzgerald started the first conversation with grade levels of teachers. I'll take Algebra 1, for example. So there will not be an individual class for each Algebra 1 teacher. Rather, there will be Algebra 1. And if you are in 8th grade taking Algebra 1, you have access to that content. If you're in 9th grade taking Algebra 1, you have access to that content. If you had to make up Algebra 1 because you didn't pass it, you have access to that content. So there is one Algebra 1 that all PISD students taking Algebra 1 will have an opportunity to access for their online instructional purposes. And all of the Algebra 1 team will be working with a designated administrator to get that content ready to go, to be loaded into a Google Docs format, so that way it'll be accessible. Now, we're using next week to plan all of this out. So fortunately, the instructional directors had the foresight to plan instruction for this week and next week. The following week, let me get the exact, let me see. So the week of the 6th through 10th of April, all our teachers will be working on the new online content, which will be launched the 13th through 17th. So we're going to basically stay a week ahead all the way to the end of the school year, which is to the week of the 15th. On the 18th to the 22nd of May, that'll be when we're accepting the forms, having the forms emailed in or dropped off with the signatures of parents and students in the courses they took. That'll apply to everything at the high school level: art, fine arts, so band, choir, theater arts, everything that has a credit affixed to it. We'll have those teachers loading things into a Google Docs folder for our high school students and the 8th grade students taking it to have access to. At the middle school, we're doing the same thing. But instead of, we'll have, for example, 6th grade reading, 7th grade reading, 8th grade reading. I believe what we're looking at there with 6, 7, and 8, we'll have general reading that'll scaffold out, general math that'll scaffold out. And so parents will see those links on there as well. Elementary, we'll have it again broken down by grade level as we did before. And it'll look similar. It'll be under the same link as before. And that's what TA is requiring of us, that we do have a pass-fail option. Now, if people don't turn the information in, we're going to do everything we can to be sure that we get the signatures in. So that covers all of the new instruction. Now, the way we looked at a lot of the STAR-tested grades and STAR-tested content, because the STAR test was right around the corner and we were getting into review mode, very little new content was to be taught in the next few weeks, should we have come back after spring break. So a lot of what you're going to see in the core content areas and STAR-tested grade is a review of existing content taught. Where there'll be new content taught will be in grades and courses that were not STAR-tested, that the teachers were planning on us being allowed to come back on campus. So in some of the electives, foreign language, fine arts, current tech ed, they'll have new information out for students to review. And it's important that parents and students do review that new information, because we know next year when we're back on campus, we're going to have to do quite a bit of remediation, but we'll have to do less remediation, and parents will help us out and make sure that their kids log on. That is extremely important. So in this case, we really are partnering with parents and guardians to make sure that students log on and access what they need to. That's a whole lot of stuff. Any questions on any of that? All right, has my eye twitching. All right, section 3, other considerations. GPA, this just puts in writing what we stated before. As discussed at the March 2020 board meeting, PHS will calculate GPA for graduation and honorary purposes based on the conclusion of the first semester for the 1920 school year for the senior year. As described above, priority is given to ensure students have the opportunity to earn credit. So GPA is basically the 3 years, freshman, sophomore, junior, and then half of the senior year for GPA calculation purposes. Any questions on that? Under item B, CT certifications. CT certifications are industry driven, therefore we nor the TA have a direct say in industry certification. We'll do our best to provide students with opportunities to become eligible for industry certification. However, observation hours for certain certification may not open up until well into the next school year. We'll continue to ask questions and look for information in this area. If we're allowed to come back during the summer, if we can make something work just to help kids finish out hours that they need, we will provide those opportunities. And we'll work with our CT teachers to see how we can free up their time and availability. Multiple CT teachers do have extended contracts because, well, in our ag area, just because it's summertime and kids aren't in school, the livestock still has to eat. So we still have to feed them. And so we'll see what we can do there if we're allowed to do some things during the summer to help kids prepare for CTE industry certification, and other certifications. Any questions on that? Okay. Item C, graduation ceremony and honors. Will grant tremendous grace for honors such as National Honor Society and other honor organizations. We're working on a potential virtual graduation plan, and we're not allowed the opportunity for a traditional graduation. And then as we move into May, I'll give you more information, but one of the examples I gave y'all for graduation applies here. If we're allowed to assemble, if y'all do agree to eliminate all on-campus instruction and keep everything online, but we are allowed after the 4th to have gatherings, then we'll plan for our graduation. Under item D, prom, honor breakfast, and organizational banquets. There have been many questions about PHS traditions such as prom, the senior honor breakfast, and organization banquets. If we're allowed to host large gatherings in May, we will not have time to plan every event due to the complexities presented by catering, scheduling, locations, and other logistics. However, we'll prioritize senior activities if we're allowed to reassemble. Please understand that any event we hold will be as professionally and thoughtfully done as possible, but may not measure up to past events due to never before seen constraints. So I know prom and graduation will prioritize to have that ceremony. Prom, we'll see what we can do, but it may not be as nice and fancy if we're allowed to do something prom-wise. And I mean, if we're allowed to, we'll have to see what we can pull together, and I'll come back to y'all with a recommendation in May. If we're allowed, I'll work with Ms. De La Garza to schedule a meeting like this to give you logistics on if we can get a prom together. We'll do our best efforts to do that. I mean, I think it's only fair. It may not be, like I said, as fancy as in the past, but we will do our best efforts to make sure that we do something. But graduation is our priority. That is a very important event and milestone in our students' lives. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Under compliance and record keeping, this all continues, but the complexities associated with applying for waivers or meeting alternative timelines, some of which do not exist as of yet, continue as responsibilities affixed to many of the same directors, administrators, building the online educational compliance systems to meet TA dictates. I have the examples 1 through 6. Examples that fit within this category include, but are not limited to, waivers and alternative timelines for teacher and employment evaluations, which we took care of one today. Financial reporting, teacher certification requirements, continued education, educator training dictates, and student education reclassification, LPAC, ARD, and 504. We still have to do LPAC meetings. We still have to do ARDs. We still have to do 504 meetings. And all of that is ongoing, along with building the online instruction. 2, we must continue child find for children who need exceptional education services but have not yet enrolled in public school. 3, we must continue to plan for summer school programs such as bilingual summer school and course offering for seniors who don't meet graduation standards. Even though we're providing tremendous grace, there may still be some that don't do it. And if we're allowed, we still have to plan for summer school. And bilingual summer school has not been called off. 4, another consideration is our kindergarten roundup. So that's something that we do in person. So we still have to do that, and we have to figure out how we're going to do that. And then we must continue interviewing and hiring for the following school year. And then at some point, we have to get into the buildings to see what needs to be ordered or replaced prior to the following year for curricular programs, credit-bearing content, co-curricular programs such as honor organizations, GRTC, and other clubs, and then extracurricular, fine arts, and athletics. So we still have to order things, and we still have to see what we need to order and what we need to inventory. So those are other things that are still ongoing. And even though the district has been shut down to all but principals being on campuses, we do have our directors, principals, and senior leadership team who we access this building, and we kind of come and go to make sure that we don't have large gatherings. But I mean, we have to be in here to be able to sign documents, send documents, and access some of the systems that you can't access virtually, that you have to be on site to access. I won't hit the conclusion yet because I do have one other consideration, and I've been talking with Dr. Garcia and asked Dr. Garcia to talk to Chief De La Garza. We bought a bunch of jetpacks, which are Wi-Fi hotspots, those little mobile boxes, before this all happened. And we've assigned them out to students. But at this point, there's such a back order on those Wi-Fi hotspots that you can't get them. So what we're going to look at is a time where students who have district issued laptops and they need Wi-Fi access to be able to do their makeup work, we're going to set some times where perhaps they can park outside of the high school because we have a larger parking lot and not get out of their vehicles, but access our Wi-Fi. So that way they can complete their assignments. We really are going to limit this only to our students who are, who really need to finish up work for graduation purposes. So we're going to start with them and then any other student who's failing. So we're going to look at creating a schedule and publishing that on our social media and calling out and letting parents know if you have a senior or you have another student that has work that has to be turned in so that they can get credit or pass, here are the times that you can park in the parking lot on our campuses where we'll have a campus officer available just to supervise to make sure that people aren't getting out of the car and we have 5 or 6 of them sitting at a picnic table together working on this Wi-Fi access. We want to be sure we're in alignment with the city's order and with our very own safety and security measures. So I'm going to ask Chief De La Garza and Dr. Garcia to work on a plan that also works with the city to make sure that all the entities are in agreement with what we're going to do before we announce it. So that'll be forthcoming as a consideration since we just can't get any of those Wi-Fi hotspot or jetpacks out. And I've personally gone out and delivered some to some homes and picked them up and wiped them down with the Clorox wipes and then handed them off to the next group of, to the next students. We've been doing that, but we only have so many. Any questions on any of that?
Yes, I have a question. Would that be available at all campuses, or I think you mentioned you're just going to do certain campuses?
We really want it to be only on certain campuses because we want to be sure that we have an officer available to sit there. So we really want to be sure we have one officer who's available to patrol and then one officer who's sitting there to make sure that people don't get out. So we're looking at this point, we would start off with one site first and then check volume. And if we have to open a second site, we will, but we really want to just start with one site just to manage it.
Tyler.
I think you have to hold down the space bar.
On the pertaining to summer school, could you do that? Whether it be the bilingual, summer school and the bilingual summer school, can we do that virtually? I mean, how many students do you think that we could be talking about?
We have anywhere, our bilingual summer school is pre-K and K. So any new pre-K students and any kindergarten students who are going on to first grade, we could provide the content virtually. As this morning, we were in communication with our bilingual teachers because they're all on standby because they're going to have to get ready to translate a ton of content. So we could provide that access virtually as well. So that is a good question, and that is a consideration that we can roll out. We'll just have to assess who the kids are and do they have a device, and if not, what devices we can get them, be them iPads or whatever, and what kind of access can we get them. But we could do something very similar to what we're doing with our iPad distribution. If they don't have Wi-Fi access, or if they do have Wi-Fi access, we could put live content on as well.
Okay.
I have a question. Well, I have a couple questions actually, but one, meals, are those still rolling out? We're still being able to deliver those?
Yes, ma'am. some interesting realities came up. As this was uncharted territory for the Texas Department of Agriculture, um, we had new information rolling into us on a daily basis. So we were rolling out new information on a daily basis. Our current sites that we're operating are still the same ones. However, we did do a satellite to the apartment complex off of 16th and Date Street. So we are, today is our first day that we're offering meals out there. So we'll kind of get an idea of the traffic and how many meals are being requested there. Dr. Garcia has also recommended us looking at, I believe there's a trailer park that we're looking at also expanding out to. But we want to see what the traffic looks like at the Date Street location. And if we only have 2 or 3 people pick something up, we may not be able to continue to operate it. But if we have a pretty robust group of people that, show up with their student, now, I mean, they don't have to drive. They can walk over with their student, grab it and go. Um, I'll report back to you all on those numbers. Now, some of the unfortunate side of it is that is coming out of district fund balance. I mean, we're basically paying for today because the way the TDA, Texas Department of Agriculture, wrote it is, if we weren't going to have school like on Good Friday, they're not going to pay for it on Good Friday. So if we're going to feed kids on Good Friday, it's going to come out of the district's fund balance, and we're not going to get any money from the Texas Department of Agriculture. Now, if it was a regular school day that we were going to provide a meal for, we will get a reimbursement. The other thing is we're not getting the full reimbursement rate. I'll ask Dr. Garcia to touch on what the difference in the rate is. So we are assuming some cost on this too, Dr. Garcia.
I will add that, yeah, you'll have to mute on yours, lower left-hand side.
I did mute it, but you still have the echo, so you might need to come up here and just speak on mine.
I'll do that.
Come on down.
Well, I know that you can hear from there. So what TDA did is we do the National School Lunch Program, which also offers the seamless summer operations. What I did find out yesterday is because it's the seamless summer operations, SSO, it does function with the exact same reimbursement rate. So we get $3.23 for lunch, and we got, I think, $2.20 for breakfast. So that is consistent. So they did not reduce it. Where the confusion was is if you went with the summer food service program, the SFSP, that does have a different rate. But SSO, if I heard correctly from TDA yesterday, the SSO reimbursement rate is the same as the National School Lunch Program rate.
Thanks, sir. Any questions, any other questions on the lunch program?
So those will continue then till the end of what would have been the normal school year, May 24th or whatever date that was.
Yes, ma'am. They'll continue to that regular date, and then after that, we switch over to our summer feeding program, which may end up looking exactly the same as what we're doing right now. That one is just at a different reimbursement rate. That one's at the lower reimbursement rate.
But that
Okay, one other question on.
This is brave new territory here. All right, yes, ma'am, Ms. Bass.
Oh, I was just going to ask about the ARD meetings, LPAC meetings. Those you said would still be done. Will those be done via phone, these Zoom type meetings, whatever's available to parents? Or will they won't actually be coming to the schools to meet, I'm assuming?
No, ma'am. I was visiting with Miss Tyree, and her folks are calling parents on the phone. If they have access to Zoom, we're doing some of that via Zoom. But everything that we can do to communicate with parents, our LPACs will probably be very similar. It'll probably be on the phone, or it'll be via Zoom as well. And we'll try to involve all the people that we can in it. But I don't know if you have stock in Zoom, you're doing well, because that's what we're using right now, since the general public has access to it.
just going back to it with the summer meal program, does it go 7 days a week like we're doing right now?
We're just doing 5 days a week. We found out that TDA is not paying for Saturday and Sunday, so we had to discontinue that at the end of last week, which we found was pretty harsh. But you know, we in this situation, we abide by their standards. If we were to try to pay for that, it's we calculated roughly about how much was it? 16,000 a day. So that would be 16,000 a day that we would not be reimbursed for. And that isn't something that we could sustain, but we can do the Monday through Friday. We did communicate with Snack Pack, and they're trying to help fill the gap where they can. But they're not as robust as we are, and they're not touching as many families as we were. But there's just, I think at the end, we calculated out almost an additional $100,000 on the food service side.
So this week we started. So this will be the first week of 5 days a week. I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, board? Sure. We can't see her.
Yes, I'm just curious how it's going right now. Are we still requiring the students to be in the car? And has some of that abuse settled down quite a bit?
I'll let Dr. Garcia answer that one. The abuse piece that we were concerned about earlier has settled down because we've instructed our staff, if somebody comes and asks for 18 lunches, or if we see them at multiple sites, we're not indulging that, but we do have a degree of flexibility. And so I'll let Dr. Garcia talk to that piece.
So they have a non-congregation waiver that we've submitted to TDA, and they've allowed us the opportunity to be able to provide meals for students. If the student is in the vehicle, there's no questions asked. They give the student the meal. If they're not in the vehicle, then there's one of 5 different forms of documentation that the parents need to provide. And basically, it's just either providing a report card, showing them on the Skyward portal that, hey, these are my students that are enrolled. And as long as they have something like that, then that won't be a problem. But we're able to go and provide that documentation once they submit that to us, or show that to us and give us their student name.
So it's not just to drive up, I have 5 kids, I need 5 lunches. There's verification that is required. And again, it's not us being, cruel or mean. It's a requirement from the Texas Department of Agriculture, which is a good requirement.
I have just a couple more things that I wanted to go back and touch on the graduation. I'm glad that is a #1 priority for us. That's a really important event, I know, for students, parents, grandparents. So maybe over the next month or two, we could all kind of put our heads together and think of some sort of solution to be thinking about as we enter the end of May, June. And then one more question, kind of changing it up a little bit, but I've had a lot of questions about the bond process and PSC. Are they still able to be doing work, and can we use these 2 months that we're not in school? Can they go ahead and be doing work to progress that along?
Yes, to answer that question, yes, yes, and yes. Dr. Garcia has had, we've had 2 virtual meetings online with teachers from that would be part of the Thunderbird project and part of the College Hill project. So we've had 2 online meetings. They were well attended. Surveying is still going, site management is still going, and not that it's a good thing for the state of Texas, but with the price of a barrel of oil dropping to what it has, the labor market has opened up, as well as the availability of some scarce resources such as structural steel, rebar, concrete. And so we're still on target for that. I don't know, Dr. Garcia, if you have anything you want to add.
The only thing is we'll have 2 more meetings next week to visit with Estacado and Coronado. And then from there, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to come back and revisit the design portions for College Hill and Thunderbird, because they are continually working, and we're still anticipating to hopefully break ground this summer.
So yes, ma'am, we're still very much on target for that. And a question that I hope he doesn't mind, Mr. James had asked me individually, via telephone that may be information people want to know in concert with this agenda item on kind of our circumstance with COVID-19. We were very fortunate to sell the bonds and have the proceeds placed in our depository before anything happened. So all of that has already occurred. So the funds are there and they're accumulating 2.3% interest. So we're not at risk of not being able to sell the bonds in the current market or in the current environment, which is also pretty trying, especially if you're of retirement age and are drawing off a IRA or retirement account. So our financial position is as stable as it was before all of this occurred. Any other questions while we're shut down? Okay, you have Mr. Soto and Mr.
Let's
James.
do Tyler first.
Okay,
Just going back, is SFE, are we still good supply chain wise on food?
yes, sir, we are. We have a large freezer that the board approved us purchasing. I believe in the fall semester, y'all gave us permission to replace that freezer. I've been there since the 50s, and we got it in, and it's a big one, and it's stocked up for about 2 months. Plus, we have a backup one here on this site, so we're good for the next couple months. And their supply is still intact, so we're still good there. And we're still receiving replacements as well.
Mr. Soto?
I was approached on driver's ed. What is the end result of all this? I know there's a class pending or whatever the case of the summer program. What's going to happen there?
We are reimbursing parent. Let's see, Jeff sent out a request to Rebecca yesterday to find a way to reimburse the parents because we can't put the kids in the car with an employee and have different people coming in and out of the car. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to do driver's ed. We're just going to have to reschedule it whenever we commence regular operations.
Any other questions, board?
Okay. All right. So I guess in conclusion, what I'm asking for the board to vote on is the plan. And so you see the entire plan, pages 1 through 5, sections 1 through 4, all subsections that are in alphabetical order, and then all items numerated under the alphabetical subsection of each section. And this also goes back to the preamble of the document, which is requesting board authorization to cease all on-campus operations and move all instructional operations to online. So everything will be done online except for the documents that have to be turned in on site. So it's the entire volume of what you see. So I'm asking for board authorization to proceed forward with this plan with the board's support.
Board, we've had this memorandum for a couple of days to review and probably call Dr. Sanchez with many questions. At this point, do I hear a motion for us to continue following the direction of this memorandum? Do I hear a motion?
I so move.
Okay. We have a motion by Tyler James. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Miss Amber Bass. All in favor, Mr. Adam Soto, yes or no?
Yes.
Cheryl Dickerson, yes or no?
Yes.
Amber Bass, yes or no?
Yes.
Sophia Rivera, yes or no?
Yes.
Tyler James, yes or no?
Yes.
Joanne Ray, yes or no?
Yes.
Sylvia De La Garza, yes. We have a motion that carries 7-0.
All right, that concludes the content of this meeting. We are still going to host our regular meeting on the 16th, and it'll be in this same format. And I'll be scheduling times to visit with y'all in this same format via Zoom. And so Rosie will get the information out to y'all to review prior to those meetings, but they'll focus on a couple of procurements for next year, as well as contracts for instructional and all other contracted staff. So with that, that concludes the business of the district for today.
Okay. I guess we'll call this meeting adjourned at 1:11.
Thank y'all.